Okay, well, moving on to the agenda, we do have three main agenda items. I think because of timings and availability of staff, we are going to take item 5 next, which is the counter-terrorism and anti-radicalisation report. So I'm going to hand over to you, John, to briefly introduce this.
Yeah, so thank you. So if I introduce Superintendent Nick Adams and Chief Inspector Jonathan Pickles from the North East Counter-Terrorist Unit. And we thought it was just a timely update on the work which we've been doing within communities across West Yorkshire around the prevent strand of the contest strategy. So Nick, if you would take us through.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner, you'll have a chance to read the report, so I'll summarise, I suppose in brief, our key areas of work that just helps to sort of shape how we manage the strategic risks. In my role, I've got responsibility across the North East, so that includes the other 6 forces of the North East region, and I'm responsible also for delivering and coordinating the police's response to prevent activity across West Yorkshire. Obviously, our work now has been significantly underpinned and I believe strengthened by the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act of 2015, which placed a duty on partners, particularly health, education, fire service, probation, local authorities and prisons, to ensure that prevent features in all of their frontline delivery, and prevent is considered in everything that they do. In order to deliver that partnership approach, we have, in comparison to other regions across the country, taken quite a unique position, particularly in West Yorkshire, to embed and place all of the prevent police officers out in policing districts, along with their supervisors from the North East Counter-Terrorism Unit. And that is to ensure that we have the strongest relationships possible between prevent officers and frontline staff and communities. And it gives us a really good opportunity to ensure that the sensitive areas and complex areas of policing that we're dealing with are tightly joined up with other similarly complex and sensitive areas such as female genital mutilation, child sexual exploitation, forced marriage, where communities have to have really strong, trusting relationships with the police in order to feel confident in coming forward and reporting things to us. So our approach, by embedding staff in sort of the front line of neighbourhood policing, I feel really does deliver that. And as I said, it's a unique approach in comparison to other areas of the country where those officers are based within counter-terrorism units. We support individuals when we are in receipt of reports through something that's called Prevent Case Management, which is the overarching process, if you like, that enables us to place a structured response around to individual cases, which includes Channel, which is the, as you know, the voluntary support program that helps to eradicate some of the radicalisation, the drivers, the temptations, and sometimes some of the grievances that people have got that force them into and draw them into radicalisation, cutting across all kind of spectrums of counter-terrorism, including extreme right-wing as well as the Islamic-inspired terrorism. To deliver that, then, our ongoing work at the moment is now grouped under 6 key headings, which are supporting investigations, that being counter-terrorism investigations, developing intelligence, safeguarding the vulnerable, supporting partners, disrupting extremists, and community engagement. They're the 6 key areas nationally mandated of prevent work. What changed that scene is that we previously were also responsible for delivering training, and that is now sits squarely with local authorities to train their own staff around prevent awareness, prevent understanding, and that's catered for specifically under the Counter-Terrorism and Security Act. Our work is then underpinned by the Prevent Tragedies campaign, which is a national campaign, a structure that's used to put out messages about the work that's ongoing. So the most recent programme that we had charted the work of a number of prevent contact officers across the country and showed the support that they'd given to families where individuals had travelled abroad, and it showed from the perspective of those officers the devastating consequences for families in an attempt to try and dissuade people from travelling and to encourage families to step forward and report things to us. We also work very closely with young people, being that young people are a target for extremists, and we have a young persons independent advisory group which is supported by Prevent ride-alongs, where young people get to come out, meet Prevent officers, understand the work that they do, and spend time with them. And we work with those young people to gauge their perceptions of Prevent both before and after they go through that process, and we learn from them as they do then from us. We are working with university academics, have a workshop on Monday of next week, in actual fact, where university academics are going to pitch to us for some key research projects to underpin and support some of our most challenging areas of work. That's cutting across both the N8 universities and the Secure Societies Institute at Huddersfield University. We also have a pilot site in Kirklees that's going to come into operation in November for the Channel programme, and that for the first time will see the local authority entirely owning the Channel process, and goes to the heart of the approach of making sure that safeguarding and partners are the primary driver of the Channel programme rather than the police. And Kirklees is one of just 7 pilot sites across the whole of the United Kingdom. So we're really pleased to have that up and running very shortly. Tomorrow, as you're aware, we have a partnership conference which you're very kindly opening for us in the morning, where we've got 350 frontline professionals from across the North East region coming down to Leeds, where we are hosting a conference that will chart the various risks, including online extremism, mental health vulnerabilities, and there's also colleagues from the CPS who are going to present some of the issues around the similarities between grooming for child sexual exploitation and grooming for radicalisation, and to show the methodology that's used so that frontline practitioners can understand some of those risks and vulnerabilities. And in the afternoon tomorrow, we are then going to demonstrate the partnership approach to how we tackle some of those issues. And it's all about building trust in frontline partners so they understand the threat, they understand the support that's available to hopefully then increase the number of referrals. And finally, the next step for us in how we then take that partnership approach forward is a programme of community champions and community advocates. The Prevent community champions will be police officers who are frontline officers working in schools, working in our key ward areas, who will be given an enhanced level of Prevent awareness to enable them to work very closely and support frontline Prevent officers. And the community advocates will be those people out in communities who we already work with, who might be key individuals within local community groups, who have an active voice in their communities, who can dispel some of the myths around Prevent, can build up people's resilience, build up people's confidence in coming forward and reporting things to us. And that is the next phase of our programme of work once we've finished our conference tomorrow. And that is the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that report, Nick. I'll follow up with a few questions, and it will touch on some of the things, but I guess it's just seeking a bit more information or clarity around some of the strands of work you've just mentioned there. So you've talked about some of the work you're doing to engage with other partners around the delivery of the Prevent strategy, but can you sort of explain perhaps a bit more around what obstacles you may have encountered with regarding engaging partners jointly to implement the strategy, given this wider responsibility on some of our partners?
I think it's fair to say partners across the piece have really stepped up to the mark around the Prevent duty. Some of the greatest challenges are around academic institutions, where there's some real nervousness about stifling kind of academic expression and student development by really being very supportive of Prevent. So we've got some interesting conversations that played out over the last year in how we are ensuring that academic institutions actually recognise their duty under the Prevent duty has to be to provide that balance, and not to allow simply events and speeches to take place where people are trying to prevent the Prevent agenda, if that makes sense. I think the work that's been done nationally and locally around driving the safeguarding agenda has switched people onto a different language around Prevent, which is really important. But one of the greatest challenges that we've had over the last 12 months or so has been the capacity for other organisations to pick up the Prevent duty to any great extent. That's changing over time. The government are now investing more money into some of those other areas, and other organisations have stepped up to the plate to find the resources actually to support that work. And one simple example in Kirklees, we have a combined police and local authority prevent hub where you've got local authority prevent officers working alongside police officers, and that is a direct investment by that local authority to deliver on their prevent duty.
And is that part of their pilot work?
No, that's in addition to that. That's been running pre the pilot. In actual fact, I think is one of the reasons why we were successful in bidding for Kirklees to become a pilot site.
Okay, well that's good news in terms of other partners, particularly the academic institutions, getting involved. As you've said, prevent can be seen as a safeguarding mechanism in a lot of cases. Could you just explain a bit more around what's being done to embed the prevent safeguarding aspects within West Yorkshire Police?
Each district has a channel panel now set up, which is a multi-agency panel, which very much is a safeguarding panel that looks to target individuals and to support individuals where they both volunteer for support and where there is that link to radicalisation. What we've also done, and Jonathan has led this in Bradford, is build a support mechanism to that. So where an individual is identified through a referral into Prevent as being vulnerable, but not necessarily to terrorism, we then have Prevent safeguarding support that wraps around that. So a sort of secondary tier, if you like, of safeguarding support. That's something that we've piloted in Bradford. It's been highly successful. We'll continue now to roll that out across the rest of the county. The conference tomorrow is a prime example of how we're bringing partners together to build up their understanding of the various threats and the way in which partners need to come together. And from me tomorrow as the host of that conference is to put a challenge out there to people to listen to what we're talking about, to reflect on where they have their own opportunities to try and take forward the prevent, we call it the prevent agenda, but this sort of agenda of safeguarding people from radicalisation. And I think we're making some really good strides.
Yeah, so you talked about the community champions and then advocates. So you're saying that community champions are police officers.
We may it's in its infancy as a program that we're developing. So we may settle on slightly different names, but it's just to what we want to do is to bring together those frontline officers who have a key role in some of our most vulnerable communities. And they will be officers like schools officers and your frontline ward officers. We want to bring them together to talk about radicalisation with some of those key advocates within communities who are already going out there and championing the work of the police and championing that sort of support and are willing to challenge some of the stereotypes and have difficult conversations with family and friends and colleagues, and to bring those together to make sure that everybody is working with the same clear understanding of what the risks are, what the vulnerabilities are, and what we then need to do to support people. So in essence, it's repeating some of the issues that we're going to cover tomorrow around sort of online vulnerability, mental health, but giving that to frontline staff so that they can go out with the same message to deliver in the same way.
Yeah, I mean that's good. I think you've sort of explained, because I think you're right that it perhaps needs to get away from it being just seen as a police-led approach, because let's be honest, some of our communities are sceptical about the prevent agenda, and for me the only way to sort of get over some of that is for the community themselves, whether it advocates or whatever you want to call them, taking more ownership of this within their communities.
And gives us a massive opportunity for them to feed back directly from their communities to us about where we're going wrong and where we're getting some of the messaging wrong, and we accept and recognise that the sort of seemingly innocuous things that you do sometimes have a massive impact on the perceptions of people within communities. So we want to get that right, and it's just an ideal way for us to feed out the kind of a real representation of the work that's being done, but also to gauge almost on a daily basis the impact and implications that's having in communities, so we can adapt and change what we do.
Okay. You talked about, and I think the report highlights the engagement activity within some of our communities. What processes are in place, though, to make sure that all vulnerable communities in West Yorkshire are identified and engaged with in the right way?
So I suppose starting at the top then, the Chief Exec and senior leaders across all partner organisations, local authorities are provided on a quarterly basis with a report that's called the Counter-Terrorism Local Profile, and what that does is identify communities where vulnerabilities exist, and that particularly looks at where there may have been referrals or information that's come from a community that signposts us to do some work. It could be where there are hotspots around hate crime emerging that might indicate that there is a fertile bed where potentially right-wing extremists could develop and be successful in recruiting others. So that I suppose, if you like, automatically maps some of those issues for us. And then those individual referrals, the communities that they come from, the engagement that we do with individual community groups right at the front end. So the work, as I talked about with the community advocates, well, that's only possible because we've built relationships with lots of different community groups that already feed in a lot of this information to us. So we can identify where there are new and emerging communities, where there are particularly vulnerable groups, the work that we do with mental health services that identifies where there are particular mental health vulnerabilities. That all feeds into our day-by-day assessment of the vulnerability and our response through those frontline staff that are then based out in policing districts with neighbourhood officers.
Okay, so from a sort of West Yorkshire Police North East Counter-Terrorism Unit perspective, what do you feel are the emerging threats now and perhaps over the next few years around counter-terrorism?
I suppose for me there's sort of split into two key areas. There are those national threats. Obviously we sit at severe as our national threat level at the moment, meaning an attack is imminent. We've seen the things that have gone on around Europe and further afield that give us those immediate risks for the sorts of incidents that may play out on the streets of the United Kingdom and indeed in West Yorkshire. And that threat, I think it's very difficult to predict over the next 5 years because it all depends on some of those the development of some of the groups far afield and overseas away from us. However, more locally, the challenges for us in whatever, organisations like Daesh, however they manifest themselves, the real is for us around understanding and responding to the vulnerabilities. So that's around the mental health, it's around online radicalisation and grooming, and how families are then responding to some of this threat. And they're the three key areas for me where our work needs to be invested over the coming years to both understand the problem and then develop the solution to that. And again, I'm going to come back, that's exactly what the conference tomorrow is about doing with those frontline staff.
Yeah, no, I look forward to the event tomorrow in having that wider conversation. Just in relation to my own office, I mean, you'll be aware of the Safer Communities Fund, which is made up from the proceeds of crime monies. We have actually supported some groups who are raising awareness around anti-radicalisation and community cohesion. And it was just to say to you that please bear in mind that this funding is available for any sort of projects or groups you might feel could benefit from that avenue of funding as well, because it is set up for all organisations to bid into. So if there's anything that comes to mind or emerges, then please let us know.
Engage with the prevent officers and the neighbourhood policing teams to explain that again to them, so that, because they've got some really good links with some community groups who could bid into that fund.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, I don't think I have any more questions, unless there's anything else you want to add that we haven't already.
Let's just give us an opportunity, hopefully, to provide you with an update of the work that's ongoing, and thank you for that.
Okay, well, thanks for the report, and clearly it's an area that I certainly will want to keep a close eye on in working with you and having further reports to this meeting going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.